Good morning. It is Wednesday morning and we are back, the Small Business Connection podcast. We are the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. We're here to help you make the most of your business by learning from other entrepreneurs. That is our whole goal in life. I want to remind you, and I'm going to tell you, I mentioned my kids a lot on this show. I need you to subscribe. I'm putting that across the bottom. Subscribe on YouTube, and you do that at youtube.com/BrennanAnnie. And the reason I mentioned it right now is I was having dinner with my son the other night. He's 14 years old, and he says, Mom, the most popular YouTubers always put it at the beginning of their show. And he was right. So please do subscribe. I'm going to keep it running up for a while so you guys can see it. It does help us out. We are a small business, so it does help us grow. It also helps, I will tell you this, we created this podcast to help entrepreneurs, not just you out there as a listener, but the entrepreneurs we bring on here. So you subscribing will help other entrepreneurs. What we find is that almost every time somebody comes on the show, they call me back afterwards and say, hey, I got a new client today from that interview. So please help us help other entrepreneurs. It's such an easy way to reach out and help other people. We're on episode 69 of our small little podcast. So we're growing and growing, and that's so cool. I think we are now up to 1,000 not subscribers, but listeners for our podcast downloads for the podcast itself, not the videos. The videos, we've had thousands and thousands and thousands, and that's so very cool. That just amazes me. I want to remind you that we are live streaming this. We do that. We remind you of that because that means you can ask us questions. So please do ask us questions. You've got experts on the show. I'm here as a digital marketing agency. I'm here as an owner of a small business myself, and I'm bringing on guests who can answer your questions. So ask them, make comments, and shamelessly plug your business. It's such a great way to put your business out there, shamelessly plug it so people can come back and find you. We want to help you. That's why we're here. All right. Today we have Felicia Barlow Clar. She's with Epilogue Tributes, and she's going to talk about a lot of things, but she's going to talk about specifically being a Renaissance woman and making some changes in her life. And we're going to talk about that today. So Felicia, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah.
Good. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I'm going to go into how you pivoted and changed your life. And it was a pretty big change. So start with who you are and what you do.
Okay. I'm an Annapolitan. I've lived here for more than 20 years, but pretty much grew up here since I live in my grandparents' old house. Marylander for life, and an event producer and video producer is sort of what I segued into in the last 20 or so years. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Animal advocate.
Yeah. That's awesome. And you have a dog. You said she's not feeling well right now.
No, she's laying here right next to me. I'm a little worried.
Yeah, we have a Great Dane, so we love dogs. Yeah, we love them. All right, so tell us, one of the things you talked about is being a Renaissance woman. Why do you describe yourself that way?
Well, I'm in a coaching group, and I never really termed myself that until the people on we use Voxer, a walkie-talkie app, to talk to each other. And the people on my app would ask questions, and I would just chime in answers like, well, when I, worked in the accounting office for 16 years, this is what I learned. Or when I worked in events, doing a presidential inauguration, this is what I learned. Or when I did publishing here and there. And finally, they were all like, what have you not done? I was like, you don't look old enough to have done all of these things, but that's what I've talked about, recreating myself every so many years.
Right.
I truly do feel like I'm a Renaissance woman. I have 3 degrees all in varying things that I know how they connect, but other people don't quite understand how they connect.
Right. Well, I have to tell you, it's funny that you say that because it occurs to me, one of the things that has always bothered me is when people say people don't change. Mm-hmm. And I think, are you kidding me? People change constantly. I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't even think I'm the same person I was 5 years ago. So we change in many, many ways. Maybe our core values don't change, but even that, I think, changes as we get to know ourselves better. So I love that, you call yourself that. So tell us this most recent pivot. What happened? What inspired it?
Well, I've been working in the events industry for the last 25 or so years, and experienced a lot of death in my life, a lot of animal deaths, a lot of my grandparents. And my stepfather passed away in November 2017, and my sister passed away last March. And being the event person in the family, I was always tasked to be the one when they would hand the list to you at the funeral home to, okay, give us all of this stuff within a week. It just always fell on me to do and to collect everything. So I started realizing that there was a real need within the end of life industry for something different than a funeral home. Because for my sister's funeral, or actually celebration of life is a better term for it, she did not fit any of the templates that they were handing us. And so it was a matter of asking the right questions as an event person and being able to personalize all the details. So at the end of her service, I had everybody up dancing because that is who she was. That was her personality. So,
oh, that's great. That is really great. And I think that makes sense because we are also very, very different, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
that's what I find at funeral homes. I mean, almost every funeral I've been to, I mean, most of them are lovely and they're about grief and sadness, but there is sort of this template, cookie cutter formula that they go by. And that's what I found is like, you know, for my stepfather, it didn't work. For my sister, it didn't work. So.
Right. Well, you know, it actually go back to Burgers and Bands. I talk about Burgers and Bands a lot, our suicide prevention charity. And we created it with the idea that it's really hard for people to go to things that are sad. And, you know, that you don't need to gloss over sadness, but you don't have to wallow in sadness either, because especially when somebody has led a life of joy.
Yes.
Right? If they've led a life of joy, isn't it wonderful to have an end of life celebration that's joyful and remembering them in that way? So I love that you do this. I think it's really an important service that you offer.
Mm-hmm. So, there's a beautiful quote out there about that you can hold grief and sadness or grief and joy at the same time, which I think you can have more than one emotion.
Right. It makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. And we, you know, with Burgers and Bands, that's really important to us because we want people to come and we want them to understand that they're not alone. And you can't do that if you come and everybody's sad, there's a lot of crying. We don't have sad speeches. We tell people if you're going to speak, that's great. Please don't speak about things that are going to make people cry. We don't want to spend the entire time with people in tears. It doesn't mean that it's not if you want to come and you want to talk to me and you want to share your story of your child or your parent or somebody you've lost, we want to hear it. We really do. We want to celebrate their life with you, but we don't want to have the entire thing just be somber and sad. So I think it's really important. So I want to go back. So we talked about people are talking about right now about pivoting in business, but our personal lives are a huge part of our lives. What we do outside of business is such a huge part of our lives. So what are some of the pivots that people are doing in their personal lives?
I think a lot of more self-care is happening right now. I think people are leaning into meditation and yoga. I mean, I do yoga far more than I ever did. Even these things, Zoom calls. I started in March. Like immediately when they shut everything down, I set up Zoom calls with my family every night. Now we do them about once a week, but yeah, it's just embracing something different.
Exactly. Well, and you know, it's funny because one of the things I did during this is I don't have a problem with alcohol. It wasn't that I went, oh, this is really bad for my life, but I went, you know, I'm drinking a little more because of COVID. You have the booze in the house, you drink it. And so in April, I just stopped drinking altogether.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people are doing that, or a lot of people are taking a step towards leading a healthier life or towards reading more. But I think it is learning more and self-awareness. I think a lot of that is happening. So it's interesting to see. I'd love people who are watching this. I'd love to hear how you've pivoted in your personal life. What are those small changes you've made that have made a difference and why? So you mentioned meditation. That's huge.
I've meditated for years. I kind of went out of it for a while. I was getting too much information I didn't know what to do with. So. But I've gotten definitely back into it. I do a call every morning with my church, meditations, and
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very spiritual, which is one of the things that's in the pivots in life that kind of brought me to doing these celebrations of life.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. I was saying this morning, I told my husband, I'm like, I have the busiest day. I have to take 10 minutes to meditate. And he's like, wait a second, that makes no sense. And I'm like, those 10 minutes give me more time. They really do. They give me the time because I can slow down, and it's almost like just slowing down my day just a little bit so I can take a breath. Right.
Yeah.
So
brain refresher.
yeah, exactly. So let's talk about mindset as a barrier for entrepreneurs. What is, when you say that mindset is a barrier for entrepreneurs, what are you talking about there?
Well, like I said, I've been very involved in the spiritual community for 25 plus years, and consciousness is one of the underlying foundations to all of that. And realizing like what makes you tick, what are the conversations in your head that drive you to do things. And I think most entrepreneurs don't realize, it's almost like there's a formula to doing a business, but mindset is 80% of it. So if you have a fear of rejection or imposter syndrome, or the word no, if you're an introvert like I am and you don't want to go out and mingle and network, those are the things that can hold you back from having a successful business if you don't realize that it's your mindset and that you just need to kind of work through that. I'm lucky that I found a coaching community that is all about mindset, and we do business things as well, but 80% of it's mindset.
Right. It's I've talked about this on the show before, but I spent a long time thinking that I had this real character flaw. I do things very fast. I make decisions very, very quickly, right? And I thought, oh, I'm not discerning. I'm not stopping long enough to think things through. That's really bad. And then I came to realize that I didn't understand people who have paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't understand it. And then I realized that's because I never have that. I don't spend so much time analyzing things that I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm like, oh, I'm just going to make a decision. Because I can always come back to this other one later, right? I can always go back and I can always learn. But it's those sorts of things are huge.
That's a gift. But to me, if you are like that with your decision, you trust your intuition.
Right. Well, I've started thinking of it now. I'm like, that's my superpower.
Yes.
It's my superpower. And it's so funny because for so long it was not. It was something else, you know.
Well, it's funny that this is the book, The Power of Decision. Yeah. That company that I work with for mindset, that's the first thing they sent us.
Okay, I'm going to write that book down because we have the we actually have a list going on our website about that. So The Power of Decision.
Yeah, by Raymond Charles Barker.
Raymond Charles. Okay, thank you.
And the whole thing is like when you decide, it's like then everything can kind of align. The universe can align with you.
Right. Well, we've talked about this too, and within our company, it's so hard when you have a client and something happens and you realize, oh, this client's not working out. And sometimes it's personality, sometimes it's things going over the scope. So I mean, it can be any number of things, and it always takes me forever. This is one time that I do have a hard time making a decision. I know that I should go ahead and say to them, hey, this isn't working out. We're going to need to part ways. Mm-hmm. But it's hard because you're like, there's a paycheck coming in there, right? But every time you make that decision, and I've talked to so many people about it, and they've said the same thing. Every time you make that decision that, hey, this isn't working, good things follow. You let them go, and more clients come in, and in better, clients that you're better able to handle, better able to serve. And it's such a powerful thing to realize that letting go sometimes is such a huge part of what you do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. You're making the right one to come along.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit about, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, you have a coaching group. Mm-hmm. What does that look like?
Well, we have a call today with David Bear is the person with the company, and he is a transformational trainer, which I've been in transformational work for, again, 25 something years. I've just found it to have profoundly changed me, like we were talking about, people can change. So that has been the basis of it. And I've found companies through the years, and David is the one that I've been working with for the past year or so. And I have a personal one-on-one coach. Once a month, I talk to her. And then I have a group of entrepreneurs that I work with. We do sprints every few months where we really get ourselves on the court, kind of putting the business things into action.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really interesting group, but the main part of the work is when you come up against something that's holding you back, like distractions. Distractions are kind of a mindset thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and coaching is so important. It's so, we go through our lives and we think, well, I got this. And we keep ourselves in this one little line. And because we're focused on that, we miss all the stuff out here. So
Yeah.
if you have somebody who can look at what you do, a person who I listen to a lot, Michael Hyatt, he talks a lot about coaching. And he talks about a time when he had a really bad quarter. And he had this coach she says, so what happened? And he says, well, the economy did this and the higher ups did this and my employees did this and did it. And he went on and on and on. And she said to him, so what is your culpability in this? What did you do?
Mhm.
And he's like, well, and the first reaction was to say, not my fault. And then he said, oh, well, I could have done this and I should have done that.
Mhm.
And now going forward, I can implement this. But had she not asked that question, he was still focused on all of these things that had gone wrong without thinking about all the things that he could do going forward.
Yeah.
So I think that outside influence is huge.
Oh, it definitely is. Like I said, I did LifeSpring, which is, most people know Landmark. So I did LifeSpring 23 years ago, and that was pivotal. And that's where I first got into coaching. And that was before that was even a term. Like they even had to explain to us that we would be working with the coach every day.
Right.
Knew what that was.
Yeah. And it makes total sense because I started this business on a wing and a prayer, right? I just said, I have a business card. I'm going to build a website because I know how to do that. And let's start the business. I didn't know anything. So I was so lucky to have coaches in my life who, as I've moved along, have guided me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think it's so important.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit because you've mentioned spirituality a few times and you use that in your work-life emotional balance. Tell us a little bit about how you do that, how you use spirituality to balance everything that's going on.
Well, I do things like journal every day, like a gratitude journal. Or what we work on in the group I'm in is decision matrices. Like when you have a fear of rejection, you decide something new and
right.
Decision matrix around that. Those are very spiritual, metaphysical beliefs. So those are some of the things I do. But then, like I said, I get on the Course in Miracles call every morning with my church. I belong to a metaphysical church. So
yeah.
It's just such a part of who I am. Like when I did those transformational workshops, I didn't even realize how much I already came into the world with this set of beliefs. So they just sort of kind of helped me become aware of them and then build on them and go bigger. But I read a lot of books. I got another one in front of me. Marianne Williamson's Return to Love was probably one of the first books I ever read based in spirituality that really kind of opened my mind up to everything that's out there.
Right. We don't talk a lot on this show about God and that's not a decision. It's just it's not a subject that has come up, but it's interesting. So a few years ago, I've always been very, very much a believer, And a few years ago, we went through a really hard time with our child, and I was very, very, very angry with God. I had a very hard time with God, and that lasted for quite some time. And I stopped going to church. I stopped praying as much. Just a lot of things like that. And I went to a conference, and it was a goal-setting conference. And as I was there, somebody said, she said, why don't we go to dinner? We'll talk about our goals. And I said, okay. So the goal setting was not just for your business, but for your whole life. And my number one goal during that was to reconnect with God and try to believe again. And this was my thought. And I told her that. And she says, Anne, I've known you for 5 hours. That's it. I've known you for 5 hours. And during that time, you have 5 different times mentioned God moments in your life about how you started your business or how you started your charity or how you got sponsors who just were the absolute right fit. And she said, you keep saying God moments. And I went, oh, I can check that off my list. But it was so ingrained in me that I hadn't realized how much that I still had that belief. And it took somebody else pointing it out to me that, no, the belief is there. You're just overanalyzing it, basically.
Yeah.
You're overanalyzing it because you do go through those ebbs and flows with your faith in particular.
It can be hard when times are rough, like right now, it can be very hard. But I think that's a whole thing too about decision. Is like, I don't think anything is an accident. I think it's all pretty much designed to be the way it is. And it's sort of seeing the God, universe, whatever you call it, in everything. And that's what I look at. And even like when you're saying that, like your friend pointing out to you that you already were in that stance of the God, having faith. And that's why I feel like everybody has their purpose in life.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. I want to talk real quick. I'm going to switch lanes completely and talk about using events for your business, because were you at the summit where I spoke about Facebook events and how powerful they are for your business?
I think I might have been. I'm not sure.
So people create events and then they don't put them on Facebook or LinkedIn, or by the way, you can put them on Google My Business now. Oh. It's so incredibly powerful to have events, but I want to hear your take on it because you do a lot of this.
Well, I mean, events, can drive a lot of businesses. I worked for years in corporate events, and so was doing things for big companies that, of course, have annual conventions or quarterly meetings, fundraisers. It elevates the platform for the business in many ways, especially with sponsorship, but it also elevates if you have members, you invite members to come along. It can create feel-good moments. I helped, I was part of a committee that helped create the Annapolis Film Festival, and that's something that, the whole city resonates with. I did 10 years ago an outdoor festival also in Appaloosa with one of the local bars, and that was another thing. Like it was only a year, but 3,000 people showed up. Which is very difficult to get 3,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Event.
Well, I mean, a good example of this is our Burgers and Bands event, right? We created this Burgers and Bands event, but to think about how it came about, we were doing these crazy long walks through the woods, Ethan and I, and we were raising money for suicide prevention, but we were raising about $10,000 every year. And that was it, right? And that was a lot of work, trying to walk for 24 hours straight through the woods by ourselves. That was crazy. And we weren't reaching as many people on our goal. Yes, the money was great. To raise the money was awesome. But to raise the awareness, and to create a community, and when we have even volunteer events, we get a lot of people who show up to help us with this. So creating something that creates a community around your brand is a really huge way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Like I do volunteer work for the SPCA, and prior to the pandemic, that probably was their biggest fundraising successes, like the puppy plunge and the walk. So, yeah, and they have a huge presence in Annapolis, the SPCA. So I think all these events that they do.
Well, and I want to go back to what we talked about in the beginning, creating stuff online. So yes, a digital event, right? But you need to start thinking about events. Like right now, this is an event. We created an event for this particular thing. This particular podcast, other people are listening. It's getting out there to a lot of people. We'll have some watch parties. If you're watching this, please have a watch party. We do these sorts of things, and it helps us be seen by other people. So we create events on Facebook and LinkedIn and Google My Business, and you can do that. But you can also create these Zoom, where Lincolnapolis was last night. They had over 50 people at the event. That's huge. Online, Zoom. Yeah. That's amazing. So please, to me, if you own a business, figure out how you can create an event around your business. And maybe, gosh, I have one that I think is awesome. consider coming together with local businesses in your area. And if you need my help, I can help you do this. And let's create a post-COVID celebration next March or April. We are out of it. Everything is good. And we are going to create something that we can celebrate. Let's celebrate small businesses in your community. What a great way to do something. That would be no matter where you are, whether you're in the United States, whether you're in Maryland itself, or the United States at large, or all over the world. You can do this anywhere.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking about politics, but look at the convention that's going on this week, how they've had to rethink, the roll call and everything for the delegates. And so creative what people
Absolutely.
come up with.
Absolutely. So, so again, you've still got a few months of being online. So how can we help? What can you do? How can you gather people? Consider bringing like-minded businesses. If you own a Pilates studio, team up with a karate studio, team up with a yoga studio, team up with a meditation studio, and see what you guys can bring to people here right now. So that's huge. So, all right. I want to tell people how they can get in touch with you. So celebratingthedash.com.
That's my website.
Okay. And how else can they reach you?
Well, if they go to my website, there is a contact page where they can get a free 45-minute consultation. My phone number is listed on there, and my email address as well. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and they can find me online. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter.
Okay, well, that's great. And you accept, if people look for you, they can find you that way, for your business or for you personally?
Both.
Okay, that sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Friday we have Rich Perry coming on. He's going to be talking a little about speaking for a living, and about using speaking as an opportunity to grow your business. And we use that a lot. You see me around town speaking. You see me on these Zoom calls. I just did the summit last week, the Passionpreneur Summit. Speaking is hugely powerful for your business. A podcast, go on podcast. And he's going to talk about a little bit about how to do that and how to make the most of something you're innately good at as a business owner, is speaking about your business and your industry. So why not use it? So we're going to talk about that. Again, I want to remind you to subscribe. Please do subscribe on the podcast. If you're listening to this, it's as a podcast on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to it, please subscribe there. But also subscribe on YouTube. That helps us a lot. Please share this if you have time. Actually, even if you don't, hit the button, share. It's so easy. Please retweet it if you're on Twitter. It's super easy. We are a digital marketing agency. We can help you create podcasts like this. We can help you create blogs. We can help you create social media campaigns. There is pretty much nothing that can be done online that we can't do. So that's who's sponsoring it. My own digital marketing agency is sponsoring it right now. We are looking for sponsors going forward, though. So if you are interested in sponsoring the show, please do let us know. We're really excited about that aspect of what we're doing. And I want to, again, Felicia, this has been awesome. I'm really glad you've come on the show today. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So, and I hope I see you in Annapolis soon. I was just down there. I was down there last night over, I don't know if you know this, but the Pretty Music Academy is doing practices out at the Westin. There's a stage right beside the Annapolis Westin. And so they have their bands out there practicing right now, which is really, really a lot of fun.
That's funny. I live right across the street and didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, they have to be quiet because the hotel was complaining, which is the silliest thing, because it's not like, they're so much fun. But Annapolis is just so beautiful. So it's a great city. So,
yes.
All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Felicia, you stick around for just a minute, and we will see you all on Friday, because we have a special guest on Friday. So see you soon. Bye-bye.